A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the high-level convening on ASEAN's Integrated Energy and Digital Future, or AIEDF for short. A very good morning to Professor Sibrandus Popema, President of Sunway University, Professor Wu Wing Tai, Vice President, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Asia Headquarters, Sunway University, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, President, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and Tan Sri Sir Jeffrey Chair, Honorary Distinguished Professor, Sunway University. We are also very honored to have Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Panglima Wilfred Matius Tangau, Member of Parliament for Tuaran Sabah. We also like to welcome representatives from the Diplomatic Corps, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network Asia Headquarters, based here in the beautiful Sunway City, and the Columbia Center on Sustainable Investment, welcome to the high-level convening on ASEAN's integrated energy and digital future. Ladies and gentlemen, on the eve of the 46th ASEAN Summit, this pre-summit meeting brings together senior officials, regional institutions, technical experts, and international partners to accelerate the shared vision of an integrated net zero energy system for ASEAN. The ASEAN Energy System vision will support ASEAN's rapid economic growth, sustainable development, and industrial advance, including AI and green technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, to open proceedings this morning, please join me in welcoming Professor Emeritus Oolong, Dato Dr. Wu Wing Tai, Vice President, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Asia Headquarters at Sunway University, to deliver his welcome remarks. Prof. Wu.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's conference on the ASEAN Regional Grid. This conference had its genesis in the ASEAN Green Future project that was initiated in the middle of the COVID-19 period by the SDSN Asia Headquarters and the Climate Works at Monash University. The aim of the project was to study the options in the path to decarbonization. The SDSN team was led by Professor Leong Yun Yong, and Professor John Twitts led the team from Monash University. This project brought together 9 resident country teams working on figuring out what's the best way to achieve decarbonization of their countries. The first phase is the first part was technical feasibility. Then we moved on to the economic costs and benefits. When we arrived at the economic costs and benefit part, we realized it is absolutely foolish for every country to be going net zero emissions unilaterally. They should do so in a cooperative manner. Why should a country like Singapore be self-sufficient in green energy when it's much cheaper to get solar energy from across the straits? And in fact, even cheaper green energy is available from the hydro dams of Laos and from Sarawak. That's when we realized a truly integrated regional approach is needed. So we have got the technical feasibility done, we have got the costs and benefits done, but the question is the implementation. And the implementation, the first question is how are you going to fund it? So the financing of this regional electricity grid is fundamental. Here we are very lucky to have the timely help of the Columbia Center for Sustainable Investment. And of course, we were able to coerce her to work because she's the daughter of Jeffrey Sachs. Thank you, Lisa, for giving in to pressure so easily. And we quickly realized the key players, there are many players who have been looking at the same thing. Foremost among them are the ASEAN Center for Energy, based in Jakarta. The other one is GEICO, Global Energy Interconnection Cooperation Development Organization. Okay. Well, I'm trying to wing it because I left my notebook on my breakfast table. So this is why the hesitation of what you see. We have also got the kind participation of other big players like the Asian Development Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia area, and International Financial Corporation, the Naga, the Sarawak Energy Berhad. And here I want to acknowledge the constant helpful advice I've been receiving from Yang Berhad Wilfred Madiostagio, who's the chair of the Sabah Electric, as well as Member of Parliament for Tuaran. So with this strong help, we have the confidence to hold this conference today. And there are many people, many friends and well-wishers who have helped us to arrive at this point. First and foremost is the Jeffrey Chia Foundation that has hosted us since 2021 here at Sunway University. We have received the greatest of hospitality and a wonderful working atmosphere at Sunway University under the constant, with the constant support of Professor Sibrantis Popema. Thank you, sir. And we have worked continually with the Jeffrey Sachs Center, glove in hand, on most of the projects in which they have analytical strength in. And I have to also thank the members of the staff of Sunway University, especially those in facilities, security, and publicity, and all across the board for their very strong support. And of course, to the SDSN Asia headquarters team, to the staff of Jeffrey Sachs Center, outstandingly led by Professor Chen Chit-en, and the students of Sunway University for volunteering their great help. So, of course, the biggest thanks is to you, the audience, for coming here to support us in the task of making the world safer for our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Wu. Ladies and gentlemen, representing Tan Sri Datuk Sri Sir Dr. Jeffrey Chia, Chair of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network Malaysia and Chairman of Sunway Group, as well as Chancellor of Sunway University, who is unable to join us today, we are indeed honored to welcome the President of Sunway University, Professor Sibrantis Popema, to the stage to deliver his welcome remarks on behalf of Tan Sri Sir Jeffrey Chia.
Good morning. And indeed, I'm doing this on behalf of Sir Tan Sri Jeffrey Chia, and I have a written speech, which is something very unusual for me. But I can read. So, Excellencies and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to Sunway University Kuala Lumpur, a private, not-for-profit university founded by Tan Sri Sir Jeffrey Chia and governed by the Jeffrey Chia Foundation. Sunway University is the #1 private university in ASEAN, according to several rankings, and it provides a holistic education to now nearly 12,000 students. It's rapidly growing in student number, in quality and quantity of publications, and also in rankings. Currently, 2 new university buildings are coming up. One at Bayrox Lake that you probably saw when you were driving in. That should be ready by October or latest end of this year and will be the home for the Sunway Business School and for our Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. And another building on the other side, I could say one is next to Bayrox Lake, the other one is next to the lagoon. And that is a building that we've partly renovated and partly is an entirely new building that will become a zero-emission building, not because it is designed that way, but because 10 of our professors are doing projects, ranging from paint to solar, that will make it a zero-emission building. So a very good example of science that actually is supporting a very practical way to make something zero emission. This month, we also celebrated the start of our new Sir Geoffrey Chair Sunway Medical School. And we do this in collaboration with Sunway Medical Center, top 200 hospital in the world, according to Newsweek. And actually, that's about 100 meters that way. So everything here in Sunway is very closely connected. As you probably have found out, you can walk everywhere in 15 minutes on elevated walkways, elevated and covered walkways. So this is truly a sustainable, green and smart city. Now, our rapid rise in all 3 global rankings is mostly driven by recruitment of top researchers and a growth in quality publications and citations per paper. And actually, our citations per paper are next to none. What does that mean? It actually means that they are better than MIT, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, and so on. That means next to none. So very high citations per paper, very, very high percentage of top 1% papers, also much higher than all of those universities. Much of our education and research focuses on sustainable development, planetary health, and sustainable entrepreneurship. And as a result, our students have been elected the most employable graduates in Malaysia, now for 4 years in a row. We have a 99.95% employment rate 6 months after graduation, and also very good and rapidly rising graduate salaries. I'm mentioning that because recently I saw in the newspaper that there were doubts about the value of tertiary education. At least at Sunway University, our students come out with very good salaries as their first salary when they start their career. It's a privilege indeed to host this high-level convening on ASEAN's integrated energy and digital future. This session is organized on the eve of the 46th ASEAN Summit with the aim of bringing together committed and forward-thinking leaders to chart a path for the region's bold vision. And Professor Sachs has been talking about that just 2 days ago. An integrated and interconnected energy grid is critical if ASEAN is to realize its full potential. As Prof. Wu just said, Southeast Asia is a region of immense promise and potential. With a population close to 700 million, ASEAN's combined GDP of $3.8 trillion would rank as the 5th largest economy in the world. So nothing to be shy about here. We're also vulnerable to the negative impacts of climate change, economic uncertainty, and geopolitical tensions, and fortunately, I do not have to talk about that. Even as each member nation focuses on boosting its domestic economic resilience, ASEAN must remain united in the face of mounting pressure from major powers. In this regard, cementing greater economic integration in ASEAN is no longer just an option, but an urgent imperative. On behalf of Tan Sri Geoffrey Chair, I would like to share his vision for the Geoffrey Chair Foundation. Success as an entrepreneur allowed him to establish the Geoffrey Chair Foundation to advance both the education and the sustainability agenda. And you will notice that's exactly what he has been doing. And that's exactly what the Jeffrey Chair Foundation is doing: education and sustainability. To date, the foundation has awarded close to 900 million ringgit in scholarships, and next year we will pass the 1 billion ringgit in scholarships and grants to qualified and deserving students to pursue their studies. The foundation has already gifted $20 million to the UN SDSN to help the organization carry out its mission in advancing the sustainability agenda. And the reason for the support of the UN SDSN lies in its name. All words are important, but the one he considers the most important among this Sustainable Development Solutions Network is the word solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, our session here today is an example of this mission to advance the sustainability agenda in the region. The Jeffrey Chair Foundation has supported the ASEAN Green Future Initiative, which is working hand in hand with our partners at Climate Works Center. This initiative reflects our firm belief in regional cooperation and the need to build a low-carbon, interconnected energy system that supports both economic growth and environmental stewardship. I'm delighted to share that this ASEAN Green Future is already making a meaningful impact through 4 key areas that you will be hearing about today. First, we're strengthening Malaysia's energy transition via collaboration with the European Commission, the Reconnect initiative. Second, we have launched the ASEAN Resilient Grid Capacity Building Program, which was developed with support from the Sarawak Ministry of Energy and Environmental Sustainability. Third, UN SDSN Asia is the academic partner for the ASEAN Center for Energy for the upcoming 5th ASEAN Energy Conference this October. And fourth, we will be hosting the ASEAN School of Regulation, training and nurturing the next generation of energy policy leaders through its 2025 summer school cohort. These initiatives are rooted in our shared aspirations in ASEAN for a more inclusive, prosperous and sustainable future, and is a source of both hope and positivity in these times of turmoil and turbulence. At Sunway University and the Jeffrey Chair Foundation, we are committed believers in the proposition that the world works better when it works together. We are all in this together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are indeed truly honored to have with us this morning Professor Jeffrey Sachs, President, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, and Tan Sri Sir Jeffrey Chair, Honorary Distinguished Professor here at Sunway University, to set the context for the program today. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Jeffrey Sachs.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, President Sabrandis and Wing and all of the participants. We're here to discuss a complicated problem, and it's a problem that is complicated for the entire world, and it is a problem that is largely unsolved, even though it is an urgent problem. And in fact, I would say the fact that we are going into COP30, meaning the 30th climate conference, and the problem is still unsolved, is a measure of how difficult this issue is in practical terms. Practical for a number of reasons. The problem, of course, is to remake the energy system so that it is a low or essentially zero carbon energy system, meaning that we leave the dependency on fossil fuels and end the emissions of carbon dioxide that come from the combustion of fossil fuels because of the danger that that poses to climate. We're already too late to avoid the dangers. We've already reached 1.5 degrees Celsius. We will reach 2 degrees Celsius within 20 years, and we are at risk of extremely dire tipping points in many parts of the world, including destruction of the ice sheets and multi-meter sea level rise, destruction of the rainforests, a cutoff of the ocean circulation, melting of the permafrost, loss of alpine ecosystems, and many, many other really shocking events that are actually becoming quite likely because we have not cracked a problem that was already recognized 33 years ago when the UN Framework Convention was signed, and it's not been solved in the 30 years of diplomacy over that treaty. Why is the problem complicated? Because the energy system is at the core of our economy. The modern economy grew up on fossil fuel, and making a deep transformation of the core of the economy is not a simple matter, both because it's technologically complex, it's politically charged, there are powerful vested interests, it's a long-term problem, and the issue that brings us here today in particular is that it is a regional problem, not a national problem. And that means that any sensible approach of energy system transformation requires a high level of regional cooperation. And Wing already made the basic point that the kinds of zero carbon power that we need, whether it's wind or solar or hydro or geothermal or ocean or others, almost inevitably means that we want to transmit this power over long distances, taking into account its intermittency, the need to share over a geographic space, and therefore the need to coordinate across national boundaries. So this issue is basically a hell for governments. It's complicated, it's long-term, it's expensive, it is beyond the knowledge base of any government because it requires an understanding of a very broad range of highly uncertain and rapidly changing technologies. And it requires that you pay attention to your neighbors. Politicians don't like any single one of those factors. In fact, the problem is sufficiently difficult that my government in the United States has just given up on this problem. Trump has decided he wants to have nothing to do with it. There is no avoiding this issue. The climate is going to change whether Mr. Trump thinks so or doesn't, whether the Environmental Protection Agency says that CO2 is dangerous or not. They can say every stupid thing that they want, but the climate's going to change, and it's going to change in a very dangerous way, and we will come back to reality at some point. But in any event, this is how hard the problem is. One of the main features of this problem is governments do not know how to handle this problem. It's not only politically unpleasant, but it requires an amount of planning, forecasting, technology assessment, and understanding of many ancillary social issues and the regional and financial issues, that this cannot be done through normal processes of normal ministries. A Ministry of Energy may be skilled, but it does not have the means to solve this problem within the ministry. And because it's a regional scale problem, no national government on its own can make a plan. Now, those basic facts are not well integrated into the global policy framework. The way the global policy framework works under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement, which implements the UNFCCC, is that each country is supposed to present a so-called nationally determined contribution every 5 years. And that NDC is supposed to show a 10-year interval of future policy. This is absolutely the wrong way to approach this issue. First of all, you can't solve an issue like this in 5-year increments at 10-year planning horizons. You have, at a minimum, to start with a 30 or 40-year horizon and work backward from then to the present, what we call backcasting, in order to be able to understand what steps to take in the next years. So the whole idea that decarbonization is a series of 5-year plans is a huge mistake. Decarbonization is a 30-year scenario that then suggests a 5-year step forward, not a 5-year step forward and then we'll see what to do. So this is the first problem. The second problem is that the whole idea of a nationally determined contribution misplaces the point. It tells governments, work on your own and tell us what you're going to do, not work together in groups. Most third grades are better than this. The kids are told, go work in a group. We don't tell our governments, go work in a group. But this is what absolutely needs to be done. And third, and just to not belabor the point, the kinds of knowledge to get this right are complex because they involve technology assessments of rapidly changing and often still non-commercial or pre-commercial technologies. So that's what brings us together today. You can't evade this issue. It would be great to say, too complicated, let's talk about something else. We'd have a much better time. But you can't evade this issue because we're already at 1.5 degrees C. The warming is accelerating to more than 0.3 degrees C per decade, and we are not succeeding yet in even reaching the peak of CO2 emissions, much less driving them down to zero. No region of the world will be able to evade this issue. My economic approach is that the ones that get there first will have very significant long-term advantages. So Trump, who's not the most clever guy in the world, thinks that this is costly and too much of a headache and not good politics and anyway stupid to leave oil under the ground. So we're not going to deal with it for a while, and that'll be to America's advantage. Of course, it's the opposite. 10 years from now, it will be perfectly clear that China leads the world on all of these technologies and the United States is nowhere to be seen. And that's exactly the path that we're on right now. Countries that get their act together ahead of time will reap a very large advantage over the next 20 to 50 years. And of course, they'll do a service for the world as well. Now, just to say, I believe that East Asia will be the region that leads the transformation. And by East Asia, I mean Northeast Asia and ASEAN together, because the economies are very closely linked and will become even more closely linked. And Malaysia's power grid will, I think, within 10 years be connected to China's grid. And not just China's grid, China will be connected to Korea's grid and to Japan's grid and to Australia's grid, because it will make sense to have a very broad amount of dispersion, coverage, and offsetting of intermittency by interconnecting large parts of the world together, or large regions of the world together. So we're here specifically because Malaysia has the lead of ASEAN, and ASEAN has its homework to do. And it's a big challenge. ASEAN's been talking about this for a long time. There has been the idea of an ASEAN power grid interconnected for 30 years or so, even before the decarbonization idea became so predominant. And the decarbonization makes the need for the grid more important. But the amount of progress on the grid in 30 years has been very small, actually, compared to the amount of talk about it. And so we now need to reach action. And I believe that Malaysia's presidency of ASEAN this year can make a huge difference in committing the 10 countries working together with other neighbors, with Australia, with China, Japan, Korea, in other words, with the RCEP region, for example, to actually implement at a rapid rate. You're lucky. The fastest implementer in the world of this transformation right now, by far, is China. China, of course, was a very dirty economy, overwhelmingly coal dependent for about 85% of its primary energy until recently. But now China's putting in about half of the solar installation every year, several hundred gigawatts of solar. China's leading in nuclear, which is also a decarbonized energy source, and so on. By interconnecting closely within this region, planning properly, and solving the financial issues, I think that we're going to see East Asia be the part of the world that not only leads the energy transformation, but also produces the hardware and the software for the rest of the world to achieve the energy transformation that the world needs. So while it's been a long time coming, and we are in the 30th year of the UN Framework Convention, and it's awfully hot outside already, and getting warmer fast, we're lucky that Malaysia has the ASEAN presidency, and now we're going to solve all the problems today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sachs, for painting and setting the context for this session today.